Hunter Biden's legal team misrepresented themselves and claimed to be members of the prosecution in order to attempt to get records struck down. And later on in the day, Hunter's plea deal is revoked, and surprisingly enough, the two of those things have nothing to do with each other. So we'll be talking a lot about that today, what's happening there, and where this goes. So strap yourselves in for that one, because it's a fairly tense topic. There's a lot going on with that, and basically it's going to be interesting for the next few days. Mitch McConnell says he's fine after freezing during a news conference, further reminding us the fact that we have way too many people who are way too damn old in our government. But we'll talk about that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. Kevin Spacey is acquitted of sexual assault charges by a London jury, and a bunch of people come back out and cry foul about it. So we'll be going over some of that and where we go with that. And a woman plunges to her death from a 100-foot cliff right after a marriage proposal. Interesting enough. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Do not adjust your calendars. It is not yet September. In fact, it is still July, and we've got the heat to go with it here. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about climate change today. We are going to talk a lot about Hunter. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with that, and I mean, other than the Hunter stuff, it actually was a pretty slow news day. We're actually on indictment watch for Trump, which honestly, I'm a little surprised that they didn't drop that today with everything that was going on with Hunter. That actually shocks me that I didn't see anything. Well, I guess I didn't look that hard for it, I guess. I might have to go back and change my entire news store stack here. No, there's still not an indictment here yet. Because and I just checked it over on the left screen, and there's just basically Trump saying, "We'll have fun at the trial of the century," as the indictment looms. But yeah, usually if there's some big bombshell like the plea deal here, they come back and run and go find something on him right away. But as of right now, no, that's not the case. But we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll be talking, maybe that'll be the whole show tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that. But we've got a lot to go over here today, plus some stuff left over from yesterday over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, get some friends, get some people in here. Tell a friend, tell 10 friends about what's going on here. And let's get started in the news. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silentcaster, Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. Silentcaster right now actually is on Twitch as well right now. Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine, and Overruled with KTZed. Go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. We do our news from people who are just like you. Stop getting your news and your culture from people who wear suits that cost more than your house and people that hate you. Go check out all that great programming. It's always going to be a fantastic time. And let's get started into our news of the day. We're going to start where we always do, looking at our finance here while we wait for some people to gather in. I kind of expect Silentcaster's audience is going to pop in here tonight. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm kind of watching to see on the monitors if there is a raid that comes in here, which Silentcaster's people are always going to be welcome if they do. But let's start with the Dow while we're looking into this here. From the Dow is at 35,520.12, which means it is up 82.05 or 0.25% on the day. That is a messy day on the Dow. It did break another 52-week high, coming up to 35,633 on the high intraday before dropping back off and then bouncing back up from the drop off of that. So not a lot of gain here, and it did spend a lot of the day under. So we'll continue to watch this and see where this goes. However, this is a record since 1987, the most up days on the Dow since 1987. Now, what does this mean? Not quite as much as people think that it does. It means more than a lot of the conservatives think that it does, but it means significantly less than what like your Paige Shills and your Harry Sissons believe that it means. So what is happening with this and where this goes is the fact that, you know, it is speculation. It's what the investors typically think the market is going to do for the next 2 weeks. It's typically what you can see from the Dow on the industrial side of things. It's not the economy. It's just a projection on where people are going to be getting money and how they're going to be doing so with this. With that being said, I will remind you that if a Republican is in office and the stock market is up, the stock market is not the economy anyway. Also, if the stock market is down and a Democrat is in office, it's not the economy anyway. But if a Republican is in office and the stock market tanks, or if a Democrat is in office and we're having 13 days of rise, of course it's the economy. Why would you think it's anything else? And I spent a little bit of time here before I started getting things organized, reminding some people of that. So that is your Dow report on the day, your stock market report on the day. From your Bitcoin is sitting at 29,433 US dollars and 20 US cents. That is up $208 US dollars and 10 US cents, or about 0.75 percentage point on the day. With the big rise coming towards the current part of trading here. So very recently we had a very, very big spike on the Bitcoin. Otherwise, it looked like it was probably going to stay pretty steady throughout the day. So that's where your Bitcoin is at. Congratulations if you carry Bitcoin. You won a little bit today. Your gas prices, on the other hand, are not good news today. $3.40 entering the isthmus with a $3.38 at the BP, also on the cusp of the isthmus in Madison. We've got $3.40 on the isthmus. Out on to the east side, we've got 350s with a 329 as the outlier. Over on the west side, we've got 350s as well with a 330 as the outlier. Remember, these are not your local gas prices. However, with the rise in gas prices this past week, you can probably expect to see a small percentage of rise in your gas prices, about 5 to 6% on your gas prices. And that is where we are at with that. Let's look at our report today, coming from CNBC. Dow rises for 13th straight day, posting its best winning streak since 1987, from Sarah Min and Alex Herring. Also, let's get the live chat up here. I've just been kind of watching the monitors over on the one side. But I do, and do feel free, by the way, if you're in here, you got something to say about what we're talking about here, do feel free to come on in. Join us and tell us what you think about the Hunter Biden indictment, about what's happening with Kamala Harris, what's happening on the border, or anything else that you want to talk about here today. Dow rises for a 13th straight day, posting its best winning streak since 1987. I read the headline already. The Dow rose on Wednesday, notching its best winning streak since 1987 as traders digested a Federal Reserve rate hike and major corporate earnings. The Dow added 82.05 points, or 0.25% to 35,520.12. The 30 stock index extended its rally to 13 days in advance it hasn't achieved since January of 1987. If the index rises for 14 straight days on Thursday, it will match the longest streak ever, going back to June 1897. That was roughly 1 year after the Dow was created in May of 1896. The S&P declined 0.2% to end at 4566.75. The Nasdaq lost 0.12 to 14,127.28. The Federal Reserve raised rates to the highest level in more than 22 years after passing through a much-anticipated quarter-point rate hike at the conclusion of its meeting. However, Treasury yields slid after the Fed Chief Jerome Powell suggested the central bank could pause again here. I would say it's certainly possible that we will raise funds again at the September meeting if the data warranted, and I would say it's also possible that we would choose to hold steady, and we're going to be making careful assessments, as I said, meeting by meeting, said Powell at a press conference following the decisions. The Fed next decides on rates on September 20th. Bank shares, including Wells Fargo, gained after the comments as traders bet that the economy could skirt a recession if the Fed stays on hold. I don't know if we're there yet. Still, Powell's emphasis on the central bank would be data-dependent, left traders torn about the central bank's next move, and weighed somewhat on market sentiment. DM Ryan is joining us here today. Welcome in, first chatter of the day. On the bullish side, Google parent Alphabet rose about 5.8% as cloud revenue growth helped propel the company to a better-than-expected quarter. Also, Dow component Boeing gained 8.7% after reporting a second quarter beat following a rise in commercial aircraft deliveries. So that is what your markets are doing today. Let's look at our layoffs for the day. I was torn, and we'll probably talk about the other one tomorrow. I was torn. Is it going to be Amazon or is it going to be Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch? And I chose Amazon today because this is one of the first instances where they're actually going after the on-the-ground workers for layoffs, instead of going through HR and going through the corporate side of things. Grocery chain Amazon Fresh is eliminating hundreds of in-store jobs from the Washington Post. Where democracy goes to die in darkness, from Carolyn O'Donovan. Hundreds of grocery store staffers who work for Amazon Fresh found their jobs were being permanently eliminated on Tuesday. Amazon currently operates 44 Amazon Fresh stores in the U.S. in cities including LA, Philly, and Naperville, Illinois. The positions are being cut are zone leads who manage sections of individual stores, according to 3 former Amazon Fresh employees who spoke on the condition of anonymity to protect their careers. Staff were told the cuts were part of a cost reduction plan, the people said. Laid off employees won't report to work after Tuesday, but are being paid for 60 days, a former Amazon employee said. Well, that's nice of them at least. Trust me, if you're working at the local festival and you get laid off like that, you're not getting 60 days of pay. I can tell you that right off the bat. In a statement, Amazon spokesperson Jessica Martin said Amazon is making the changes as it elevates Amazon Fresh's performance. As a result, we've decided to evolve our in-store staffing and operations model to better serve our customers and teams, Martin said. We remain committed to our grocery business, and we're working closely with affected employees to help them find new shifts or roles within Amazon. Impacted staff can apply for other positions within Amazon or accept a severance payment. So this is, again, one of the first times they're actually going at the on-the-ground employees rather than the support staff, which is starting to make me question whether or not the Fed is going to skirt that recession as they say that they're going to or not. It's going to be a wild ride no matter what, and we will see what happens. There's no crystal ball for this. There's no prediction for this. There's no crystal ball for this. We've got a lot of stuff going on here, and even still, losing hundreds of jobs, our friends on the left will still tell us the economy is doing fantastically. So we will see what happens with that. Just a bit on the quarter-point rate hike, and then we'll move right into Hunter. Nope, I'm sorry, we're not going to move into Hunter. I do have one story update that we've got to do beforehand. From CNN, the Fed hikes interest rates by a quarter point and hints at another increase this year. We're going to do just a touch on this one because we talked about it with CNBC, but this is from Brian Mina. The Federal Reserve has raised its benchmark lending rate by a quarter point Wednesday, lifting interest rates to their highest levels in 22 years. It is the 11th rate increase since the Fed began its inflation fight in March of 2022, and comes just a month after the central bank hit pause in order to assess the state of the economy after the failures of 3 regional banks since the spring. Fed officials are estimating one more rate hike this year. I think it's going to be 3, according to their latest set of projections. Inflation's steady slowdown in recent months has been encouraging for American consumers and businesses, but officials reiterated in their post-meeting statement that inflation remains elevated and that the Fed remains highly attentive to inflation risks, suggesting that another rate hike remains on the table. In a news conference following the decision, Jerome Powell underscored that another rate hike remains an option if the economy were to pick up strength and keep an upward pressure on prices. At the margin, stronger growth could lead over time to higher inflation that would require an appropriate response from monetary policy, Powell said. He also said that the core inflation remains pretty elevated. So, they don't know what they're going to do. I've got an idea what they're going to do, and I do think that they are going to continue to do quarter points for the rest of the year. We will see what happens with this. As far as supply chains go, from Newsweek, UPS and the Teamsters have struck a deal. It's a win for America. This is an op-ed from Nina Turner, which this is not somebody who I'd normally would be taking from, but I do want to talk a bit about what's going on with this. A strike of UPS delivery drivers has been averted in the 11th hour, with less than 7 days before the current contract was set to end. UPS and the Teamsters, the union that represent 340,000 UPS drivers, struck a deal. UPS will guarantee a huge pay increase for all drivers, regardless of whether they are part-time or full-time, as well as air conditioning and UPS vans and the elimination of a 2-tiered work system. It's a huge victory, but not just for UPS drivers, it's a victory for America and for the American dream. Now, what Nina's going to try to do with this, and I did pre-read this a little bit here, and it's the reason that I used this one, is Nina actually does go through this and tell you that's because now that Amazon knows that, UPS knows that they can strike and get whatever they want, everybody else needs to just go on strike and get whatever they want. Results not typical. I will tell you that right off the bat. And furthermore, this is going to mean big rate increases for UPS. Now, I don't use UPS with what I do for work at this point because they are a bit more expensive. They're a little bit less reliable. I really only use UPS when I have to. When somebody at the other end of the line says, we have to use UPS, here, use my UPS number, because they are one of the more unreliable companies that I've worked with recently, and they're getting more expensive even without this. But that postal rate's going to have to go up to go pay for this. That's something you're going to have to keep in mind. UPS freight is going to have to go up even more. And how much do you think it's going to cost? Just out of curiosity. To retrofit hundreds of thousands of brown vans with air conditioning. And I'm not against the idea. I think that they should have bought them with air conditioning. And if there was a provision in this for everything going forward to be air conditioning, like every new van that they buy has to be air conditioned, that'll be a drop in the bucket. But to go back and have every single one of these GM chassis retrofitted for air conditioning in a way that the bodybuilder never designed them to do, UPS is going to be almost unusable. We'll see what happens, though, and where this goes, and what our rate increases come with for that. We will see, but UPS strike has been averted. So our supply chains are not snarled anymore. All right, let's get into the main news of the day. We're all here to talk about Hunter. So we're going to start with a tweet. We're going to go all the way back into the timeline because overnight, and into late yesterday. I think some of this was happening while we were on Contemporary yesterday. But in the overnight, Hunter's legal team decided to try to pretend that they were the prosecution and get a few things eliminated. We'll start with that, and then we'll go on to the plea deal as well. So we'll start with a tweet from Will Sharp, and I'm not going to call them X's, by the way. I will still call them tweets. I will probably still slip up and call the platform Twitter. But from Will Sharp, I am a former federal prosecutor, and I literally cannot believe what had just happened in Hunter Biden's tax fraud case. Based on what's been made public, here's what I think the story is. So this is right now speculation. This is when this was first breaking. The House Ways and Means Committee, led by Chairman Jason Smith, filed documents relating to their investigation of Hunter's criminal enterprise with the court overseeing his tax fraud case, in which he's scheduled to plead guilty in a sweetheart deal tomorrow. An attorney associated with Hunter's legal team contacted the court clerk's office, falsely claimed to be part of the House Ways and Means legal team, and asked the clerk to pull the adverse filing for technical reasons. The court figured out what happened and is now demanding answers from Hunter's team as to why they apparently lied to the court in what appears to be a desperate attempt to prevent evidence in his criminal enterprise from being put on the record in his tax fraud case. This is not irregular, this is insane. With a quote tweet from Miranda Devine saying, "Scandal in Delaware on the eve of Hunter's plea deal. Judge Noriega has given Hunter's lawyers till 9 p.m. to explain why they should not be sanctioned for misrepresentations to the court to improperly convince the clerk's office to remove GOP materials from the docket." So, we'll talk about this for a bit here. From Politico. Judge says member of Hunter's legal team misrepresented her identity on the eve of plea deal. From Josh Gerstein. The judge, who will review Hunter's plea deal on Wednesday, accused a member of Biden's legal team of misrepresenting herself on a phone call to the court, a bizarre episode that prompted the judge to threaten sanctions even as Biden's lawyers insisted it was all a misunderstanding. Yeah, I'm sure that they did. In a brief order Tuesday, U.S. District Court Judge Mary Ellen Noriega wrote that an employee of Latham & Watkins, a law firm representing the president's son, had called the court clerk's office and falsely claimed to work for the Republican lawyer in hopes of persuading the clerk to remove documents that apparently contained Biden's personal tax information. Which is literally what's being investigated. That should have been red flag number 1 right there. Latham denied any misconduct, saying the firm's employee identified herself as a Latham staffer and called from the law firm phone that typically displays Latham on the caller ID. The firm said there must have been an unfortunate and unintentional miscommunication between the employee and the court staff. Unintentional, unfortunate miscommunication. Oh no. Dude, I know lawyers. I have a very good lawyer. My lawyer scares the crap out of me, and I'm glad that... she's retiring right now anyway, but I'm glad that I'm in a position where it's a conflict of interest for her to ever try to sue me, because I would probably lose everything. I have a very, very, very good lawyer. The documents in question had been submitted earlier in the day as part of an amicus brief by House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith. Smith complains in the brief that Biden's plea deal on gun and tax charges is too lenient, and he alleges the federal prosecutor's investigation of Biden was tainted by political interference. Under the plea deal, Hunter has agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges, and by the way, an amount of missed taxes that would put the rest of us in prison, some of us for the rest of our lives, and enter a pretrial diversion program in order to avoid being prosecuted for a felony gun charge. Noriega, a Trump appointee, is scheduled to review the deal at a hearing in Wilmington on Wednesday morning. On the eve of that hearing, a dispute arose over Smith's amicus filing, which was signed and submitted to the court by Theodore Kittila, the managing partner of the Wilmington law firm Halloran, Farkas & Kittila. Shortly after Kittila filed the brief, the clerk's office informed the judge that a Latham employee, Jessica Bengals, had called the clerk and falsely claimed to work with Kittila. During the call, Bengals asked Smith's filing to be removed from the public docket due to sensitive information on it. The judge wrote in her order, "It appears the caller misrepresented her identity and who she worked for in an attempt to improperly convince the clerk's office to remove the amicus materials from the docket." Now I kind of want to see what the caller ID actually said. Because they're coming out saying, she called from a Latham phone, and it says Latham right on there. And somehow I don't completely buy this. What's it that I usually say? What is it that Mogwai likes to come up with? I have questions. Bengals, who is listed on Latham's website as the firm's Director of Litigation Services and Litigation Services Counsel, did not respond to an email and phone call seeking comment. But Latham lawyers representing Biden said in a court filing Tuesday night that Bengals never misrepresented herself. The matter under consideration appears to stem from the unfortunate and unintentional miscommunication between a staff member at our firm and employees of the court. We have no idea how the misunderstanding occurred, but our understanding is that there was no misrepresentation, Latham partner Matthew Salerno wrote, stressing that Bengals is not a part of the team of lawyers assigned to the Hunter Biden matter. Bengals also submitted a formal declaration denying she misrepresented herself. So, one of the things to pay attention to with this, by the way, is that these are lawyers, which means she knew to say enough to make it seem like she was an associate of Catilla, without outright saying, no, I work for the same law firm as Catilla. It might have been, oh yeah, no, I know Catilla, and he totally would want me to remove this brief. But I don't believe that, number one, if Bengals is the one who did this, or if it was some staffer that was pretending to be Bengals, but if Bengals herself did this, I don't believe for a second that she incriminated herself and said, I am an employee of Halloran, Farkas, and Catilla. I don't believe she would be that sloppy. It would be kind of interesting to hear the phone call and see what kind of lawyer speak was used for this. I don't know if that's going to be public record or made public record. It's devastating to the trial, especially now that they're going to be going to trial. So that is the first thing, and the judge has threatened to sanction Hunter's lawyers after a legal dispute with GOP lawmaker. From Marshall Cohen. Hunter's legal team denied Tuesday night that they lied to court officials to get filings from a senior Republican lawmaker removed from the public docket, blaming the dispute on an unintentional miscommunication on the eve of their client's plea hearing. Hashtopia. My first comment on Kick, by the way. Thank you. I think we've been going on for like 3 or 4 weeks off of here. Thank you, Hashtopia. Unfortunately, because I haven't figured out how to get the Restream bot into Kick, there are probably going to be some people that talk back with you, but I don't know how to get them to where you can see them on the other platforms, because we are multi-streaming right now. Their denials came in response to U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Noriega, who's presiding over the case, and threatened them with sanctions amid accusations that a member of their staff misrepresented who she worked for while successfully requesting the removal of the GOP filing. Oh, you're fine. You're fine, Hashtopia. I'm not worried about it. I got thick skin. The dispute appears to stem from an unfortunate and unintentional miscommunication between a staff member at our firm and employees of the court, Hunter's lawyers told the judge. Hunter is set to plead guilty Wednesday to 2 federal tax misdemeanors for failing to pay taxes on time in 2017 and 2018. The plea deal will also resolve a felony gun charge if Hunter Biden abides by a court-imposed rules, according to court filings. CNN has previously reported that prosecutors are expected to recommend no jail time. Yeah, you can tell this article is old because that's completely different than what we have up here. Let's look at the sanctions. After Smith's so-called amicus motion was filed on the public docket, a member of Hunter's legal team called the court clerk and represented that she worked with Smith's attorney and requested the amicus materials be taken down according to a lengthy order from the judge, which was posted Tuesday afternoon. The judge, who said she consulted with the clerk's office to figure out what happened, said, "It appears that the caller misrepresented her identity and who she worked for in an attempt to improperly convince the clerk's office to remove the amicus materials from the docket." The judge's timeline of events apparently contradicts some of the explanations given by Hunter's lawyers. Earlier in the day, Hunter's lawyers claimed the clerk took Smith's filing down on their own accord. According to the court filings, they maintained that Smith's filing violated legal rules by disclosing Hunter's personal tax information and that they called the clerk to inquire about sealing the material. Smith's committee heard testimony from 2 IRS agents who helped to lead the probe. They claimed the Justice Department officials undercut their attempts to scrutinize Biden family members' slow-walked requests. Yeah, we talked about that last week. But, oddly enough, with a subheadline here, they don't talk much about the sanctions in this particular section. So, but regardless, whoever did this, however they went about it, even if it was or was not Bengals, they done screwed up. But this leading on to the big news of the day, and oddly enough, and I said this in the cold open, I said this on the Twitter announcement, you would think that given the fact that the law firm representing Hunter came right out and said, hey, we want you to remove this. Hey, I totally work for the prosecution's lawyers. And now they're being threatened with sanctions. You would think that the two of these have to do with one another, but they don't. Huh. I got found. I definitely got found. So I guess now I have to go find some time to have dinner with somebody. Yeah, it is, Hashtopia says, to be honest, Democrat or Republican, I just want someone way younger in office. Yeah, we are kind of in a gerontocracy, aren't we, at this point? Alright, let's read from Politico. Judge declines to approve Hunter Biden plea deal for now. From Betsy Woodruff, Swan, and Josh Gerstein. Hunter's plea deal hit a roadblock during an unexpectedly contentious federal court hearing on Wednesday, as prosecutors and Biden's attorneys initially disagreed about the scope of the agreement, and the judge then balked at approving the deal. Tensions grew after a prosecutor said the federal investigation into the president's son is ongoing. After pressing both sides for details about the plea deal, U.S. District Court Judge Mary Ellen Noriega adjourned the hearing so that the two sides could refine and clarify the agreement, under which Biden had planned to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax offenses and likely avoid punishment on a felony gun charge. Again, a gun charge. And we went over the charges when they were being brought forward. That would have put any of the rest of us up the river for a nickel. Anybody else in the world would have been up for 5 years. And yes, and I've talked about this before, my brother-in-law is a local gun dealer. I know he doesn't want to be named because he doesn't want to be associated with one side or the other of the aisle, which to be honest, I don't either, but yeah, he's the local gun dealer. And he knows, I talked to him about this a bit, but yeah, when you lie on that form, you're up the river. At the end of the tumultuous 3-hour hearing, Biden instead wound up pleading not guilty to all 3 charges, and the judge postponed further proceedings, likely for a month or more. So we got a show coming, definitely. Proposed deal between Biden and the DOJ, the outline of which was announced last month, isn't dead. But prosecutors and Biden's lawyers will now have to satisfy Noriega's concerns about technical aspects of the deal and her own role in enforcing the so-called pretrial diversion agreement, under which Biden would avoid prison time on the gun charge if he remains drug-free for 2 years and doesn't break any other laws. If Noriega ultimately approves the deal, Biden will be able to withdraw the not guilty pleas he entered on Wednesday. He would then replace them with guilty pleas on the tax charges. The DOJ would defer prosecution on the gun charges. The judge made clear that she viewed the proposed deal as outside the norm. These agreements are not straightforward, and they contain some atypical provisions, Noriega said, as the hearing reached a close. Biden faces criminal charges for willfully failing to file or pay his income taxes in 2017 and 2018, and for owning a handgun in 2018, a time when he was admitted he was regularly using cocaine. Federal law prohibits drug users from possessing firearms. And it's not so much, by the way, that he was using, and it's the fact that he went onto the form, which explicitly asks, and got caught. So we're going to read from, I've got a few tweets up here that we're going to read from this. But we're going to read first from Brian Krasenstein talking a bit about what's happening with this and breaking some of it down here. But Krasenstein obviously is in the pro-Biden camp, so some of what he's saying is tainted. Breaking update on the Hunter hearing and FARA. No, despite what many people on the right are posting, Judge Mary Ellen Noriega did not strike down Hunter Biden's plea deal. Technically, that's not true. Technically, she did. But with the provision again that the plea deal can be changed back over and brought back up if he keeps his nose clean. By the way, Elon, I gotta tell you this, with your new Twitter logo up here, and the fact that I'm using so many of your tweets up here, I mean, my taskbar looks like I got porn all over the place up here. I love the branding idea, but we gotta talk about this one, Elon. Hunter's side claimed that they thought the deal meant that Hunter would have blanket immunity from prosecution from other crimes, which includes possible FARA violations. And realistically, and I talked actually a bit about this yesterday, one of the reasons that I think they were trying to push through and make sure that he got in and got his plea deal in and pled guilty to the misdemeanor is because that gives him double jeopardy protection, or perceived double jeopardy protection rather, against a host of other things that involve just his taxes and possibly his business dealings. Because they're for years that some of the business dealings that are out there are for. The prosecutor, Leo Wise, said Hunter would not get immunity from other possible crimes. It's certain crimes are trying to get into the realm of double jeopardy. And there is some very, very deep legalese that goes with this. Hunter's attorneys then stated that the deal was null and void, and prosecutors stated that there is no deal. As I'm typing this, the prosecutors and Hunter's attorneys are still in discussions to salvage the deal. And then Krasenstein, the lead spreader of misinformation, tells you, please stop spreading misinformation. Also, I think we should all agree that if Hunter committed crimes, there should be a penalty. Oh, buffalo piss. Just like with Trump, no one is above the law. I also trust the federal government to come up with a fair deal. Well, we'll see what the courts have to say about this one. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Stunned onlookers gasp as Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal crumbles in court. Tear this up. From Reuven Fenton and Stephen Nelson. We're going to finish this one here. And again, I want to talk about the political situation about this. A concern that I've had for the Donald, and a concern that I actually had for Hillary when they were chanting lock her up, and a legitimate concern that I have for this trial as well. But let's finish this one up here, and then we'll go over that. Spectators at the federal courthouse were left stunned on Wednesday as first son Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal began to collapse, setting off a chain of events that ended President Biden's 53-year-old son entering a plea of not guilty to tax and gun charges. At one point, Hunter's lawyer, Chris Clark, threatened to tear this up right now if federal prosecutors didn't meet his conditions, apparently a bid for blanket immunity for his client. District Judge Mary Ellen Noriega, who booked a follow-up court date for August 25th, had been expected to quickly sign off on Biden Justice Department's deal with Hunter, but instead the proceedings began to break down about 90 minutes into the 3-hour hearing. A gasp emerged from reporters and interested attorneys sitting in the gallery after Noriega asked Assistant U.S. Attorney Leo Wise if there was an ongoing criminal investigation involving Hunter, as Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss has consistently said. It's Wise and Weiss. Although I knew a kid with the last name Wise, like Wise spelled like Leo Wise's, but according to him, it was pronounced like Weiss, like David Weiss is. I don't know. That'd be even more confusing. Leo Weiss talked to David Weiss, and Weiss said to Weiss. You can clearly see it when you're reading it on the screen, but when I'm saying it out loud, if they were to be pronounced the same way. Wise replied, yes, and added that the first son's defense team thought otherwise, then there's no deal. Clark responded, as far as I'm concerned, the plea agreement is null and void, leaving attendees stunned and causing some journalists to rush out of the courtroom to brief their colleagues. Yes, we have breaking news here. There is no deal. So, one of the issues that I have with this, and I started to have this issue with the lock her up chants. I mean, it's a fun chant to go back out and say on the campaign trail, and our friends on the left are definitely making use of it right now. But I pointed out at the time that the vast majority of the judiciary was appointed by either Hillary's husband, and again, this was at that time, Hillary's former employer, Barack Obama, or W, who was at the time considered to be allied with the Donald. So we're talking 2016 here, before there was a schism in the Republican Party that set the old Evangelo cons against the MAGA folks. So you're sitting here wondering to yourself, where do you find a judge that's objective enough to take this case? If you get a Bush appointee, then we start to hear, oh, well, he's just in the tank to go get rid of Hillary and this, that, and the next thing. Whereas if you get, any Bill appointee would have to recuse him or herself. And realistically, I would almost think because of the administration, I don't know if this is for sure or not, but I would almost think because of the administration that any Obama judge would also have to recuse him or herself for this. The same on the Trump side. Who is objective enough to take this case? And we're already hearing rumblings, by the way, about, oh, Eileen Cannon's just going to throw this case because she's a Trump stooge and she's a Trump puppet. Okay. Now, a lot of the Clinton appointees have either retired or died off at this point, because it's been now 8 years since then. So the vast majority of the judiciary, especially given how much work Trump and McConnell did during his term, is either appointed by Trump or appointed by Barack, with a few outliers still from W, and I think there are still a couple of Clinton outliers out there. But the vast majority of the judiciary, the vast majority of people who would be hearing a case in a federal court, were appointed by one of these two people, who were at each other's throats. The Hunter case, we're in the same situation. The vast majority, and this is a federal case, of the federal judiciary was appointed by Hunter's dad's old boss or Hunter's dad's political enemy. And either way, whether Hunter's guilty or innocent, we have half the country that's not going to accept it based on who made the decision. There was somebody else that had tweeted out here earlier and said, should Joe pardon Hunter? And honestly, as much as I've said and complained about the fact that the rest of us would be in prison for this, that would actually be the best thing for the country. Because I don't know that there's anybody objective enough in the eyes of the people to take up this case. Let's do a recap of this here from DC Drano. Hunter Biden's simple recap. Plea deal contains secret provision to provide Hunter with legal immunity for all future federal charges currently under investigation. Judge said, "What the fuck is this?" DOJ in defense, Judge, never seen that before. No deal. How do you plead now? Hunter, not guilty. Hunter is now going to trial for his crimes. Again, that's not technically true. If he does hold his nose to the grindstone, he can go back with his not guilty plea and go back to the misdemeanors. And we'll be talking about the provisions of that in just a moment. One that I thought was funny here. Disclosed.tv says Justin Hunter's plea deal was not accepted in federal court after a judge handling the case expressed concerns. And Wisconsin's conservative Sponge says, hope the judge doesn't end up Clinton'd. Thank you, Wiz. All right. So I don't know that we need to go through this local story here, KCRA, just based on the fact that a lot of this was in the New York Post article. We'll look at this one for a moment. From Claudia Lauer, Randall Chase, and Colleen Long. The plea deal in Hunter's criminal case unraveled during a court hearing Wednesday as the federal judge raised concerns about the terms of the agreement that has infuriated Republicans who believe the president's son is getting preferential treatment. Hunter was charged last month with 2 misdemeanor crimes, a failure to pay more than $100,000 in taxes from over $1.5 million on income in both 2017 and 2018, and had been expected to plead guilty Wednesday after he made the agreement with prosecutors who were planning to recommend 2 years of probation. Prosecutors said Wednesday Hunter remains under active investigation but would not reveal details. U.S. District Court Judge Mariela Noriega, who was appointed by President Trump, raised multiple concerns about the specifics of the deal and her role in the proceedings. The plan also included an agreement on separate gun charges, which we know about as well. The overlapping agreements created confusion for the judge, who said the lawyers needed to untangle technical issues, including over her role in enforcing the gun agreement before moving forward. It seems to me you're saying, just rubber stamp the agreement, Your Honor. It seems to me to be form over substance, she said. She asked the defense lawyers and prosecutors to explain why she should accept the deal. In the meantime, Hunter pleaded not guilty to the tax charges. The collapsed proceedings were a surprising development in the years-long investigation, and a resolution that had been carefully negotiated over several weeks included a lengthy back and forth between the Justice Department, prosecutors, and Biden's attorneys. The plea deal was meant to clear the air for Hunter and avert a trial that would have generated weeks or months of distracting headlines. But the politics remain as messy as ever, with Republicans insisting he got a sweetheart deal and the Justice Department pressing ahead on investigations into Trump, the GOP's 2024 presidential primary frontrunner. So that is where we are at with that. Silentcaster's joined us over here, probably bringing a raid over here. Let me go double check. Yeah, raid with a party of 2 and Mogwai resubscribe over on the Twitch side rather. Welcome. Thank you for the resub, by the way. So I do have the conditions of release, where we've got the document here, and we can look at that. Thank you, Julie Kelly, for providing the documentation of this. But we will read this outside of the level of the document as well. Just here, pursuant to 18 U.S. Code, Section 342, subsection C, paragraph 1, subparagraph B, the court may impose the following least restrictive conditions only as necessary to reasonably assure the appearance of the person as required and the safety of any other persons in the community. The defendant must submit to supervision by and report for supervision to the Central District of California with a phone number and continue or actively seek employment, which he's an artist, he's employed. Abide by the following restrictions. We've got some of this here. Checks. Let's look at this number 1, a little bit easier to read because I don't have super high resolution in this. And read from Calesto instead. Breaking now, Hunter Biden conditions of release just dropped. Requirements. Cannot possess a firearm. Cannot use or possess any controlled substance, including marijuana, unless prescribed. There's a funny joke on this one a little bit later. Must submit to full federal supervision. I mean, standard boilerplate stuff. No use of alcohol at all, which is actually a pretty significant one because, and this is somebody who's been through the legal system before, typically alcohol is not a prohibited one. Unless you actually have a problem with alcohol. That is atypical. Participate in substance abuse therapy. Submit to testing for prohibited substances. And seek employment. Which means, of course, the White House has just released a new position that they're hiring for. Designated pisser. Thank you, Levi Anthony, for that little quip there. So that's where the Hunter thing stands right now. It's going to be interesting to watch where we go with this, what happens with this. And again, number one, how the news media takes this and how the propaganda arm takes this. Because one of the things with the propaganda is that there's been a massive gift to them to say, hey, the evil Republicans are going after poor old president's son, and he's not even a federal officer, and he's this and that. But I got one from the Daily Wire, and they call this an analysis, and I typically remind everybody that analyses are usually op-eds that are disguised as something else. But the analysis asks, will Republicans impeach Biden? Here's the full corruption timeline. I am actually going to say probably not. I don't think it's going to happen. This is from Hank Berrien. House Republicans are moving closer to an impeachment inquiry against President Biden, according to Speaker McCarthy, as party leaders continue to investigate allegations that the president accepted millions of dollars in bribes from foreign entities, including individuals linked to the CCP. With the investigation into the alleged corruption of the Biden family, primarily Biden and his son Hunter, heating up, here's a timeline according to the House Republicans and other documentation of the events that some lawmakers have said may lead to Biden's impeachment. Again, don't know. I seriously doubt it's going to happen. On November 2013, Hunter joined with Chinese investors to create Bohai Harvest, RST Equity Investment Fund Management Company, LTD, an investment fund controlled by the Bank of China 1 month later. Then Vice President Joe Biden traveled with Hunter on Air Force Two to China and met with CEO of BHR, Jonathan Lee, soon after that. BHR's business license was approved and Hunter had become a board member. February 5th, 2014, Kenes Rakishev, a Kazakhstani businessman, met Hunter at the Washington, D.C. hotel. On April 23rd, 2014, Rakishev's Singaporean company wired $142,300 through his Latvian company to Rosemont entity. Soon after that, the entity wired $142,300 to a car dealership in New Jersey for a new sports car for Hunter Biden. May 12, 2014, Ukrainian gas producer Burisma announced that Hunter had joined the board of directors. May 21st, 2014, 9 days later, Vice President Biden revisited Romania and delivered a speech to the Romanian Prime Minister, judges, prosecutors, and leaders of the Romanian Parliament. September 12, 2014, BHR invested $1.7 billion in a Chinese Communist Party-linked petroleum and chemical company. Roughly 3 months later, Hunter Biden and his business associate invested $484,920 into BHR. A few weeks later, Rakishev's Kazakhstani oil company and Burisma joined with the CCP-linked company and announced a transnational financial arrangement. March 20th, 2015, flash forward to March 2015 when Hunter organized a business dinner for Cafe Milano in D.C., where Joe stopped by to meet high-level Burisma official Vadim Pojarski. September 1st, 2015, BHR joined with CCP-linked entity to acquire U.S.-based Henniges Automotive in a deal reportedly worth $600 million. November 2nd, 2015, Pozharsky suggested high-level U.S. officials visit Ukraine and talk with prosecutor Viktor Shokin and President Peter Poroshenko about Shokin's investigation into Burisma CEO Mykola Zlochevsky for fraud. November 15th, as the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability documents, a company owned by Biden associate began receiving from a Romanian businessman what turned out to be millions of dollars over the course of 2 years. So this and they go up a little bit more into 2015, 2016. Now, oddly enough, with Shapiro being a lawyer and a high-level lawyer on top of that as well, the hardest thing that's going to go with this, and a lot of this goes along with the documents too, by the documents case that's going on in Miami right now, is that in both cases, this and the documents case, there has to be provable intent. And while I believe that there is corruption through the Biden family, me being not a fan of government, what's been posted here in the analysis does not come to the level of intent. It does a really good job of putting the pawns into place if you want to analyze this and actually take action of it, but we still need to see intent, and I would be interested to see where the lawyers believe that they intend to come back and prove that. But also, again, based on the fact of I don't know who is going to be objective enough to try this and have the entire country accept it. That's my biggest concern. Alright, but that's what we have on the Bidens for the day. A lot of things moving, a lot of things going on here. Let's move on and let's talk about Mitch McConnell. We're using Krasenstein again, because he's got video that all the other outlets that I had did not have. So, Ed Krasenstein tweeting out, breaking, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell appears to have had some sort of medical incident moments ago on Capitol Hill. During a press conference, McConnell froze up mid-sentence and was escorted away from the podium. After some time, McConnell returned to the podium and said that he was fine. This definitely seems very concerning. I wish all the best to McConnell and his health. Hopefully, he can have someone check him out. What are your thoughts on what just took place? Well, we have got an ancient, polio-ridden politician who is not all mentally there, sitting out here making decisions for what happens to the rest of the country, and somebody else that's deeply entrenched into the government money machine. Hey guys, let's find a primary. Can we legitimately find somebody younger than this? Somewhere? Anywhere? Bueller? Let's watch.
We're on a path to finishing the NDA this week. It's been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
It's like watching your computer struggle to finish the task it was on because it ran out of memory.
Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch? Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Go back.
Go ahead, John.
I'll take it back. Let's go back to you.
Go ahead, John.
we're on a path to finishing the.
So, as far as life goes, as far as whether or not he's okay, I do wish Mitch McConnell a long and healthy life. I hope that he lives well beyond the years that he has become from right now. But there is a difference. I mean, do we still need to have this gerontocracy in our government? People like this? Your cognitive abilities start to decline when you get older. Is there anybody younger out there? Anywhere? Don't make me do it. I'd be the worst president in history. Hey, don't kill each other and leave me alone. Don't bring me any laws unless they're repeals. But there's gotta be somebody younger out here that still has cognitive ability somewhere. From NPC News. Mitch McConnell escorted away from cameras after freezing during a news conference. From Rebecca Shabbat and Liz Brown Kaiser. Senate Minority Leader Turtleman McConnell suddenly stopped speaking during a weekly Republican leadership news conference on Wednesday afternoon, appearing to freeze and then went silent and was walked away. McConnell has been making his opening remarks about an annual defense policy bill when he stopped talking. The Republican leader was silent for 19 seconds. His Republican colleagues asked if he was okay, and John Barrasso of Wyoming, a top McConnell deputy, who previously worked as physician before serving in Congress, escorted McConnell, 81, away from 81. Why? Away from the cameras and reporters. Joni Ernst of Iowa made a hand gesture that initially appeared to resemble a sign of the cross, but her office later clarified that she was motioning for Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota. A few minutes later, McConnell walked back to the news conference by himself. When asked about his health, he said he was fine. Asked whether he was able to do his job, McConnell said, yeah. Asked about the episode, a McConnell aide pointed to the GOP leader, saying, I'm fine. But the aide added that McConnell felt lightheaded and stepped away for a moment. Too much coke. Slow down on the coke, Mitch, and you'll be fine. And some reaction to this, of course, from Politico. McConnell episode alarms Senate GOP. From Burgess Everett. Mitch McConnell's sudden freeze during a Wednesday afternoon press conference jolted the Senate Republican conference, eliciting hopes from allies and detractors alike that he will fully recover from any health issues, and I do hope that he does. I also hope that he will consider stepping down from office, but I do hope that he recovers. Yeah, Mogwai says McConnell's buffering. We read about this one. Ted Cruz. My prayers are with him. That obviously was concerning. I hope it was just a momentary issue and he's doing better. Said Ted Cruz of Texas, who was tangled politically with McConnell for a decade. Mitch is strong as hell and stubborn as a mule. I hope every hope that he will fight back from any health issues and fully recover. The minority leader only got through a few words of his speech about the chamber's annual defense bill and trailed off and stared straight ahead for a few seconds. As his fellow senators asked if he was okay a few minutes later, his office provided a brief explanation of what happened, though it's not clear if McConnell received any medical treatment. So, that's where they're going with that. Mogwai says, Lindsey Graham says, thoughts and prayers, sugar. Alright, let's talk about Kevin Spacey. As that hit the news today, UK jury acquits Kevin Spacey of sexual assault charges based on allegations by 4 men over 20 years. From Ryan Melly. Now, I will pull full ignorance on this, and I will admit full ignorance on this. I don't know how the UK court system works. If they have to have unanimity in their verdicts like we do, then I'm actually not that surprised that this happened this way. Partially because of the star power of Kevin Spacey, and partially because this is something that went on over 20 years. I'm not 100% surprised by this. If there's unanimity required. If it's simple majority, I'm a little bit more surprised. But I don't know the UK's laws. From Brian Milley, a jury in London acquitted Kevin Spacey of sexual assault on Wednesday after the Oscar winner's star turn as a witness in his own defense spared him a possible prison term and offered him hope of a career comeback after 6 years without a job. Tears rolled down Spacey's cheeks as the final not guilty verdict was read. The Oscar winner looked at the jury, placed his hand over the lapel of his blue suit and pink shirt, and mouthed, "Thank you." It was his 64th birthday. I imagine what many of you can understand, that there's a lot for me to process after what's happened today, a humbled Spacey said outside Southwark Crown Court after thanking a handful of jurors in the lobby. I'm enormously grateful to the jury for having taken the time to examine all the evidence and all of the facts carefully before they reached their decision. Spacey's 2 days of testimony culminated with him choking up as he spoke of his 6 years without work since the sex abuse allegations against him surfaced in 2017. "My world exploded," Spacey testified. "There was a rush to judgment, and before the first question was asked or answered, I lost my job, I lost my reputation, I lost everything in a matter of days." 3 men accused Spacey of aggressively grabbing their crotches, describing him as a vile and slippery, snaky predator. A 4th, an aspiring actor, said he awoke to the actor performing oral sex on him after falling asleep or passing out in a Spacey's London apartment, where he had gone for career advice and a beer. Spacey said he was a big flirt who had consensual flings with men and whose only misstep was touching a man's groin while making a clumsy pass. Defense lawyer Patrick Gibbs said 3 of the men were liars, and their encounters had been reimagined with a sinister spin. He accused them of hopping on a #MeToo bandwagon in hope of striking it rich. 2 of the men have sued Spacey. So, that is an interesting point to bring up with that too, and I did want to talk about that before the Associated Press brought it up, is the fact that there at the time, there isn't as much of it going on now, I've noticed. That has kind of died off. But this was hitting, like, when the accusations came out was about the time that the things against Weinstein started coming out, and everybody else had their own #MeToo story at the same time. I don't know what happened in this room. Or these rooms. The only people who know what happened in these rooms are Kevin Spacey and the 4 men involved. None of the rest of us will ever know for sure. There will be speculation. We can make some educated guesses, but none of us will know for sure what actually happened in those rooms. Something I have pointed out with every closed-door encounter that's brought up. The only people who actually know what happened are the people who were there. And I will come with full admission that I don't know. I've not been following the story. I know a lot of people really haven't. Like, he got hit with the allegations, he went to court for them, well, he started going through the court process for them, and then it just kind of died off. I don't know if this was the right decision or not. And again, I don't know with the UK courts how they come to their verdict either. But Spacey is a free man. Now, whether or not he'll be able to return to Hollywood as a free man, or people... And that's one of the other things too, is there going to be a boycott of anything that has him in it? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get his career back after this. We'll see. I don't have a crystal ball. We will watch and see what happens there. Let's do one from The Hill. This is an op-ed from The Hill, the views expressed by the contributors. Darren Baxt, the opinion contributor for this one, is the view of Darren Baxt, and not necessarily the view of The Hill, or Contemporary, or Turns Pages Productions, or your host, J. Edgar. Congress must remove federal barriers to the sale of meat. I think you all know why I'm so interested in this. Coronavirus concerns have made trips to the grocery store more stressful enough. Finding fewer choices and higher prices for meat and poultry only makes matters worse. This shortage is a result of a bottleneck in a meat processing plants due to COVID-19 related worker illnesses and even deaths. While this bottleneck appears to be easing, these problems have put the meat supply system in the spotlight, especially the federal meat inspection system. And that, by the way, is going to be one of the big ones, is getting the government oversight into this. The current system creates barriers for the sale of meat by limiting the types of processing facilities whose meat can be sold across state lines, interstate commerce, and even within a state's borders, intrastate commerce. Specifically, the only meat from federally inspected facilities can be sold in interstate commerce. State-inspected meat, with limited exceptions, can only be sold in intrastate commerce. Making matters worse, 23 states don't have state-inspected facilities. There are also custom slaughterhouses that don't have the same inspection requirements as federal and state facilities. Federal law prohibits the sale of custom slaughtered meat altogether. That doesn't stop anybody. I know people. Even within a state's borders, these facilities provide services for people who want animals slaughtered or processed for their own personal use. That is, by the way, when you go out and buy, like you and your buddies go out and buy a whole cow or a half a cow or something. So you've bought the animal while it's alive, and then the slaughterhouse does the custom slaughter for it and processes the meat. As a result, these barriers, farmers are sometimes required to travel long distances to find meat processing facilities to meet their needs. This burden is costly and time-consuming. Congress needs to knock down these barriers that hurt farmers and American families. Yeah, but we have a centralized federal government that is not interested in knocking down these barriers because it makes them money. The almighty dollar, especially when it comes to the government, is the big driver into this. I do agree with Darren Bax, by the way. Especially if we're coming in a situation where this is getting harder and harder and prices are skyrocketing. Let's knock down some of the barriers. We'll put the waiver on there if we've got to put the waiver on there and saying, hey, this comes from a facility that was not federally inspected. Do you still want to buy it? Yes or no? Check yes. Check no. Trust me, a lot of people, okay, maybe not around here because I live very close to a city, but a lot of people around where I grew up in Redacted. Oh, let's face it, they probably already do that. Again, we know people. And he goes on to talk about going with state-inspected facilities, 27 states that operate U.S. Department of Agriculture approved state meat and poultry inspection programs, as explained by the USDA. This means the state programs meet and enforce requirements at least equal to those imposed under the Federal Meat Inspection Act, Poultry Products Inspection Act, and Humane Methods of Slaughter Act of 1978. However, despite the equivalency, meat from these state-inspected facilities may only be sold in intrastate commerce. That is a good point to bring up. If they meet and exceed the federal standard, what's the issue with having it sent over state lines? Other than, again, getting to pay another government bureaucrat to go back in and inspect your facilities. Demanding more taxpayer dollars, more process fees, and making it just a little bit harder to sell your product. That's a good point to bring up with that. But we do need to knock down some of these regulations. And again, if we got to put a waiver on it, we've got to put a waiver on it. I do think most people with common sense know what they're getting into, but common sense is a little bit hard to come by these days. From the Daily Wire, an interesting one, by the way, that I was on the phone with a friend of mine right before we got started. And I brought this up, and I probably would have passed this one over Except it caught my attention, number one, and then the fact that I told her about it on top of it, she wants to know the answers too. I have not pre-read this article. I don't know what's going to happen here. From the Daily Wire, woman plunges to death from a 100-foot cliff after marriage proposal, from Katie Jerkovich. A newly engaged woman plunged to her death after she fell over the edge of a 100-foot scenic seaside cliff in Turkey, only minutes after her boyfriend got down on one knee and proposed. Yesim Demir, 39, had gone to the romantic spot with the would-be groom, Nizamettin Gursu, where the two were just about to celebrate their engagement with a picnic meal when Demir slipped off the steep cliff in Kanakkale, a city in northwest Turkey, on July 6th, the New York Post reported. Gursu told local outlets, "We chose to have a romantic memory after the proposal. We drank some alcohol, everything happened at once. She lost her balance and fell down." F. And just as I said fell down, Mogwai's chat came in, which I know that he said this about 10 seconds before I did, but because I think that's usually the delay with Twitch is 10 seconds. But Mogwai says, "Fell head over heels." I'm sorry, but I had to. No apologies needed, my friend. No apologies needed. The soon-to-be groom left his bride-to-be to get food and drinks in the car when she heard Demir let out an awful scream. Newsflash reported Gursu rushed back to the spot where he left Yasim, and when he returned, he spotted his fiancée at the foot of the cliffside point. Oh, F. Dude, big F's for that. Because he's the first one to see her deceased, too, on top of that. F's in the chat. Oh, that's terrible. That's a fate worse than death is. To find the woman you've loved, that you love, and then suddenly lose her like that, in a second. Medics arrived immediately began work on reviving Demir, who initially survived the 104. Okay, the fact that she didn't die instantly, props to that. And I understand the fact that she did eventually pass away, but props to living at least briefly from this. But later she succumbed to her injuries and was officially declared deceased after 45 minutes of resuscitation efforts failed, the outlet noted. That's lame. Now I'm sad. What else do we have? Let's talk about what happened in Florida. Now, interestingly enough, even outlets like The Blaze, who are very friendly to Ron DeSantis, did not bring up a lot of what was going on in DeSantis' actual curriculum, only the reaction to it. Now we actually have somebody who's saying that Kamala's claims are made up. And again, I don't know what was in this curriculum, but I'm kind of curious as to seeing what it was that Kamala said versus what was actually in here. So let's read from The Blaze. And this is apparently coming from a CNN panelist too. CNN panelist calls out Kamala Harris for completely made up claims about Florida curriculum after VP calls Supreme Court and Florida lawmakers extremists. From Andrew Chapados. A CNN senior political commentator called Vice President Harris for making a completely made-up remark about Florida's new school curriculum, as part of which Harris claimed the state was teaching children that slaves benefited from slavery. Harris said in a recent speech that in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people have benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it, Harris shouted over the memory of the fact that her grandfather owned slaves in Jamaica. Scott Jennings, a Harvard lecturer and former special assistant to President W. That's not a good resume. Harvard lecturer and assistant to W. Took issue with the vice president's remarks while on CNN panel as reported by the Daily Mail. Do we have video of this, by the way? Yes, we do. Looks like it didn't load properly, but yeah, we have video. Let's listen. Let's take it straight from the horse's mouth, per se.
It's amazing to me that how little Kamala Harris apparently has to do, that she can read something on Twitter one day and be on an airplane the next to make something literally out of nothing. This is a completely made-up deal. I looked at the standards. I even looked at an analysis of the standards in every instance where the word slavery or slave was used. I even read the statement of the African-American scholars that wrote the standards, not Ron DeSantis, but the scholars. Everybody involved in this says this is completely a fabricated issue. And yet, look how quickly Kamala Harris jumped on it. So the fact that this is her best moment, a fabricated matter, is pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
They've got the cringe Fox News video too, with the music in the background. I say usually having music in my background, obviously, but with the tone music in the background, and then they put the guy's his words up there, and then just put things up on the screen. And by the way, still no indicator what's actually in the curriculum. So there is that to keep in mind. And the Blaze is keeping, and Fox and everybody else who are, again, typically friendly to Governor DeSantis, do appear to be keeping this pretty tightly under wraps. Mo West says, speaking of someone nosediving off a cliff, here's DeSantis. Again, this is not going to be a DeSantis hate channel. As much as I don't like him, when he does good things, we'll praise him, and when he does bad things, we'll call him the moron that he is. But on a, let's say, cheerier note, because again, I don't want any of these people to die. I want them to live long and happy lives. Just not in office anymore. But from News Channel 9, Florida man Ron DeSantis involved in car crash in Chattanooga on Tuesday, from Leslie Dominique. Florida man Ron DeSantis was involved in a car crash on I-75 South Tuesday morning. Dude, I was just there. Okay, it's been 3 weeks, but I was just there. It happened near the 2.8 mile marker just south of the 153 exit. Oh crap, I know exactly where that is. The crash involved 4 vehicles, according to Chattanooga police. CPD says there was an accident that occurred prior to the motorcade crash. As a result, the governor's motorcade had to stop that traffic for that traffic crash. Subsequently, 3 vehicles in his motorcade were in a dead-end collision. No, they got rear-ended. They took it in the back. Sorry. But DeSantis is unhurt. Everybody's fine. The motorcade's a little bit banged up, but everybody's fine. The motorcade can be replaced. We can take it to the body shop. It'll be fine. Dick Durbin is in the news. Fully vaccinated Dick Durbin tests positive for the pinko pox again. For the 3rd time this year. From NBC5 Chicago. Illinois Senator and Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin revealed on Sunday that he has tested positive for the pinko pox, marking his 3rd positive test in the span of a year. In a tweet at 8:43 p.m. on Sunday, Durbin said as a result, he is disappointed that he'll have to miss critical work on the Senate's National Defense Authorization Act this week in D.C. In adherence with current CDC guidelines, Durbin said he will quarantine at home while following the advice of his doctor and working remotely. Which, I mean, you should always follow the advice of your doctor, no matter what. No matter if the CDC says so or not. hey, this guy knows you, your medical chart, your history, and all about you. Yeah, you probably should be taking his advice. Prior to Sunday, the longtime senator most recently tested positive in March. At that time, Durbin said he was only experiencing minor symptoms, noting he was fully vaccinated and boosted. Well, I hope that he recovers quickly. Again, I don't wish any harm on these people. I want them to not be in office anymore, but not that way. Speaking of people in office, so Liz Warren and Thomas Massie got into it a little bit here. Thomas Massie, of course, voting to authorize the debt ceiling raise after complaining for 6 years in the House. Is it 6 years or 4 years? 6 years, I think, in the House, about how high the U.S. national debt was coming. But Liz Warren brags about the IRS taking millions from tax dodgers, but Thomas Massie pulls the rug out from underneath her. From Carlos Garcia. Thomas Massie of Kentucky pulled the rug out from under Elizabeth Warren after she tried to brag about the IRS seizing millions from delinquent accounts. Warren posted an article from the Associated Press on her official social media account in an attempt to bolster the argument that the IRS should be given more money to hunt down people who are cheating on their taxes. Yes, let's give the government more money. They always handle it so well, don't they? The IRS collected $38 million from 175 plus millionaire tax cheats in the past months. One bought a Maserati and a Bentley instead of paying taxes. I doubt that. House Republicans want to slash IRS funding to protect wealthy tax cheats. We should be increasing it, Warren tweeted on Sunday. Republicans who control the House have tried to obstruct a Democrat plan to spend billions in additional taxpayer money in order to help the IRS ostensibly fulfill this mandate. Massie pointed out that the millions obtained by the IRS was paltry compared to the billions that Warren and other Democrats handed out through spending policies passed in March 2020. She gave them over $1 trillion with the CARES Act, and now she's bragging that the IRS collected $38 million from them, he tweeted and added a facepalm emoji. Which is a fair assessment, by the way. A lot, and I understand, again, the CARES Act, on paper, was given out to only people on the bottom rungs of society. They were the only ones that got the checks, but they turned around, and especially at the time, when only the big box stores were open, spent that money at the Walmarts, at the Home Depots, at the big box stores, at the Targets, sending all that money that they just got, $1,400 or however the hell much it was, right back up to those billionaires. Good job. I don't think this was quite the own that Glenn Beck's writers thought it was. However, I think Carlos Garcia missed the mark a little bit to make this propagandistic. We've got another one here from the Blaze. FBI improperly used warrantless surveillance powers on U.S. Senator and other state officials. Court documents reveal. Good God, a misuse of surveillance footage from the government? That's never happened before. From Candace Hathaway. Court documents released Friday reveal that the FBI improperly used its anti-terrorism surveillance powers on a U.S. senator, a state senator, and a state judge. Once again, the FBI is being accused of abusing Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which grants the agency the authority to spy on non-U.S. individuals living abroad, and yet continually gets turned on U.S. citizens. God only knows how that happens. According to the FBI, Section 702 is an indispensable tool. Oh, there are so many jokes that could be made out of that. I'm going to leave that one alone. Silentcast says, remember the Titanic sub that imploded? They actually died from COVID. Mogwai says, it always feels like somebody's watching me. Thank you, Mogwai. According to the FBI, Section 702 is an indispensable tool that allows the Bureau to protect against national security threats. However, the agency has repeatedly been accused of abusing its powers to spy on Americans. In May, it was revealed that the FBI improperly implemented Section 702 powers to gather intelligence on 133 individuals arrested in connection with civil unrest and protests between May 30th and June 18th, 2020. In total, the Bureau was accused of surveilling Americans more than 278,000 times in the fiscal year, ending in November 2021, according to a court filing. Yeah, big shocker there, and by the way, they keep re-upping the Patriot Act. At the time of the findings, a spokesperson speaking on behalf of the FBI Director Christopher Wray described the agency's errors as completely unacceptable. Despite the repeated improper use, Wray has maintained that Section 702, which is set to expire by the end of the year unless a new resolution is passed to extend the powers, is a critical tool necessary to fight against foreign adversaries. Yeah, of course Wray wants it. It lets him completely bypass the 4th and 5th Amendment. Yeah, that's right, Mogwai. If the government doesn't spy on you, the terrorists win. I still remember that old line from the old Carlin bit right after September 11th. Boy, these American businessmen sure know how to take advantage of a situation. Go out and buy yourself a new car and some jewelry, otherwise the terrorists win. Mogwai says the government is spying on Silentcaster, and frankly, Silentcaster owes for therapy bills. Subscribe to Silentcaster so he can pay for his therapy bills. So there we have that. We've got one from the Daily Wire. GOP congressman makes a case for why we should not fear a government shutdown. Well, I mean, the biggest problem with the government shutdown is they're going to open it back up eventually. From Daniel Shayton. A Republican lawmaker argued on Tuesday in favor of making a plea for spending cuts without fear of a government shutdown as the appropriations process ramps up. Appearing with colleagues on the conservative House Freedom Caucus outside the U.S. Capitol building, Bob Good made a hardline case for demanding fiscal restraint ahead of a new fiscal year which starts in the fall. Aaron Rupar has to come out and complain about this. We should not fear a government shutdown. Most of what we do here is bad anyway, Good said. Good said it's bad, so it must be bad because he is good. Let's listen to Representative Bob Good of Virginia.
Bob, did you want to answer?
I would add to that, we should not fear a government shutdown. Most of what we do up here is bad anyway. Most of what we do up here hurts the American people. When we do stuff to the American people while promising to do things for the American people, essential operations continue. 85%, as Mr. Biggs has just given me that number, continues. Most of the American people won't even miss if the government is shut down temporarily.
And Bob Good does bring up a good point. Like, everything that's essential, the mail doesn't stop. And I don't actually know if they ever got to a point where the Social Security checks don't go out or if they stop that artificially to put some pressure on any of this. The paychecks do stop going out for the, non-essential federal employees, which, God, by the way, how would that make you feel? and I brought this up during the last government shutdown, the extended one that we had under the Donald. How would that make you feel to know that you're working for the government for X amount of years, you've done your job, you've always gotten in on time, you make good proposals, you do good work, and the government still thinks that you're non-essential? What does that do to your mind? But, I mean, in reality, when the government shutdown goes on, and we saw some of this under the Obama shutdown. The one that happened between, it wasn't Paul Ryan yet, it was Boehner. When Boehner and Obama got into it over the budget deal and the government shut down, and like, you heard about it everywhere on the TV, on the newspaper, online, and everywhere, that it's horrible, the government shut down, you can't do anything, and that only lasted for like 9 days. And at the end of the 9 days, they were actually going out and chaining up national monuments and national parks, so that there was actually some drawback to the American people, to the common man. Because the vast majority of what happens under a government shutdown happens to the people on the internal side. It doesn't affect you and I. And most of the direct government services that you and I experience come on a local level anyway. As much as I complain about there's way too much government overreach and they do too much and impose too much on us, realistically, government services from the federal government do not directly affect you and I. Oddly enough. There are way too many federal laws, I will give it that, but like, government services don't really, the U.S. government, federal government services do not affect us directly, and the mail still goes. As during the last extended one too, I remember a YouTube channel I used to watch, Matt Christensen, Beauty and the Beta, where they were discussing what was happening in the government shutdown. And Matt lives somewhere by one of the big national parks in Montana, and had pointed out the fact, because he was an avid hiker, that really the only difference for him hiking was the fact that nobody was in there cleaning the bathrooms. Nobody was taking out the trash or changing out the paper towel in the bathrooms. But again, if the government does manage to shut down, then we're going to get wall-to-wall coverage about how many people are going to die over it. On social media, Jerry Connolly of Virginia shot back at Good with a short list of services he said federal agencies would be unable to provide. The FHA can't process loans and mortgage approvals, which 70% of the people who are getting loans and mortgage approvals are doing so completely separate of the FHA, so there's a very small number of people out there that are affected by that. And many of them are doing, you don't buy a home that often. The FDA can't conduct food safety inspections. The Small Business Administration can't process loans to help start small businesses. And the EPA can't inspect drinking water systems and chemical facilities, the Democrats said in a post. Which again, they'll all start doing that in 10 days, again, with back pay. So, Bob Good says we shouldn't be concerned about a government shutdown. I'm not particularly concerned about a government shutdown. Considering again that most of the essential services keep going. And only people that the government deems non-essential get a complex for being told that they're not essential enough to get paid. Come back and check with us when we open the government back up again. We're going to talk about ABC journalist Jim Meek. So we're going to start with this one from the Daily Mail. Disgraced ABC journalist James Meek knew the age of the 16-year-old girl he pressured for nude photos, docs reveal, before the FBI raid on his home. From Jim Gordon for DailyMail.com. No, not that Jim Gordon. Why is Bluey in the news? Hidden detail in Bluey's theme song shocks Aussie parents. My kids are horrified. I never noticed until now. Full disclosure, I've never seen the show, but I know that my nieces really like Bluey. I got my youngest one a bingo plushie that talks for her birthday. James Meek, the journalist arrested on charges of child pornography, knew that the true age of the 16-year-old girl he was communicating with, according to letters between his lawyers and the federal investigators. Yeah, they usually do. Again, there are not a lot of instances where somebody is shocked to find out, oh, she was really only 16. I mean, we see it in sitcoms all the time, but it's not a common occurrence. Letters reveal the teenager informed him that she was underage, yet Meek allegedly continued to send explicit messages to her. The FBI's Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force led the investigation and stated in an affidavit filed in February that the naked photos of the teen that included her Snapchat username in the corner of the screenshots were found on one of Meek's phones seized during the raid in his Arlington, Virginia home. Although the filings do not give specific details as to how Meek and the teen first came into contact with one another, the saved Snapchat messages provided a window for investigators as the nature of the relationship between the two. The DOJ wrote in an unsealed letter to Meek's defense attorneys that the girl, who was referred to as identified minor number 2, which, think about that for a second, means that there's also an identified minor number 1. Think about that for a moment. Told investigators in a recorded interview that she shared her age with Meek when she was 16 years old. It's not known how long the pair had been communicating with one another before she allegedly informed Meek of her age. According to the FBI, the girl claimed that she felt pressured by an account believed to belong to Meek and other men to send sexually explicit photos. Several of Meek's devices allegedly contain images depicting children engaged in sexually explicit conduct. To the wood chipper with you. Feet first, still alive. And multiple chat conversations with users engaged in sexually explicit conversations where the participants expressed enthusiasm for sexual abuse of children, according to the DOJ. God, I hate it here. Following the raid, the department obtained a search warrant for Meek's iCloud, which contained backups of 2 of his devices, including a screenshot of one of the explicit discussions, according to the Daily Beast. Authorities also uncovered an Apple laptop that contained approximately 90 images and videos of child porn. God, I hate it here. Meek is a former investigative producer for ABC News. Meek had also been known for his trailblazing journalism, which has exposed shocking military cover-ups, friendly fire deaths, and foiled terror plots. He now stands accused of sharing extremely graphic child abuse fantasies. Extremely graphic child abuse fantasies and exchanging images and videos of such abuses with users on the messaging app Kik. People still use that? I had that for a while. Well, another one bites the dust. Enjoy prison. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty, but I'm going to say right off the bat that there does appear to be quite a bit of enough evidence to do this one open and shut. You still have the opportunity to speak in front of a jury of your peers. And I hope they nail you to the cross. Because that's where degenerates like you belong. We've got one here from the Chicago Sun-Times. We're going to be wrapping it up here in just a bit with something I'm thankful for, but let's get through a couple more of these. This I'm going to move out to things that I hate. In fact, I think after this one, we're going to move everything else out to things that I hate. So we'll finish up with this one from the Chicago Sun-Times. We'll do what I'm thankful for, and we'll head out of here for the night. So, from the Chicago Sun-Times, traffic stop yields $800,000 in counterfeit bonds, blank FBI credentials, U.S. Marshal Star, Homeland Security Shield. From the Sun-Times staff. Missed a bunch of the chat here. Signcaster says you can donate to me directly on PayPal. I shut my PayPal down because I say probably some of the wrong things online, and I know it was a draft opinion and it wasn't meant for the public about finding people for wrong speak online, but I'm still poor. I can't take that chance. Mobile says, it feels like you're in a car ride with older siblings, and they grab your arm and you hit yourself. If the government shuts down, will that affect Lindsey Graham's debutante ball? It will not, by the way. I'm asking for a senator friend. Mobile says, it's never good when you have a breaking news alert and it's your house. James Meek walks into a house, told to take a seat and have a cookie. Was it Chris Larson, was it? You know what the worst part of that dude was? Is most of them got away with it for entrapment. Like, we have legitimate degenerate fucks. And entrapment laws got Hanson, not Larson, thank you. And most of them got away with it just because of the way that they structure the show and the entrapment laws around it. That one I cannot read on YouTube, Mogwai. That one's a little bit too spicy for YouTube. Alright, let's finish this one out here. A routine traffic stop near O'Hare led to the seizure of $800,000 in counterfeit U.S. savings bonds, blank FBI credentials, a U.S. Marshal Service star, and a Department of Homeland Security investigation shield. Robert Krilich Jr. was taken into custody after his car was stopped in Rosemont last week and was charged with possession of a forged counterfeit documents with intent to defraud. Which I don't know what other intent you would have for forged documents like that, but apparently the US government thinks that there's some other intent, because they have to make that into a separate charge. Krilich was driving south on River Road when police stopped him because he had no visible license plate. According to a federal complaint, Krilich told officers he just returned from Las Vegas and has picked his car up from the airport parking lot. Someone must have stolen his license plates, he said. Now, I gotta say this. I don't agree with using federal credentials to defraud people. And obviously, if you have that many savings bonds, you are one of the people who's inflating the currency if they're counterfeit. Because the government has to go back and print off more money to cover those savings bonds. But imagine you're running this level of criminal enterprise that you have fake shield, fake FBI credentials, and almost $1 million in U.S. savings bond, counterfeit, fake, that you're going to go back and make bank off of. And you lose your ass over a missing license plate. Just think about that for a second. Let's see. But the officers noticed the blank piece of white paper was actually covering the license plate. I stand corrected. Dude, if you're gonna do it, take it off. You moron. The complaint states the officers ran the plate and discovered Krilich was wanted on a warrant for fraud. A search of the car turned up $24,873 in cash, 5 glass pipes with a white powdery residue believed to be from narcotics, crack, about 3 dozen sheets of counterfeit U.S. savings bonds in folders in the trunk, blank FBI credentials, a silver U.S. Marshal Service star, and a gold and blue Department of Homeland Security investigation shield, the complaint states. Wow. I'm at a loss for words on this one. You know, I read a book when I was younger, probably 5th or 6th grade. That was honestly probably a little bit above my reading level because of some of the sexual crimes that were in the book. But it was called America's Dumbest Criminals. Some of the stuff that was going on there I didn't actually understand. It was funny, the stuff I did understand. It was hilarious. But stuff like this belongs in that book. Seriously. Anyway, that's the news for the day. We're going to save these last couple of stories here for things that I hate. There are actually only 2, but two of the CNN articles here are video that go along with the NPC news article here. So let's finish out with something that I'm thankful for, and we'll finish out for the day. We'll actually get out just a touch early tonight, oddly enough. All right, so I thought about it. And I will concede to you, Molly, what I'm thankful for. So, I'm single. And somebody that I've liked for a while. She joined us here tonight. But I want to say what some of that does to a person. If that person is in the right mindset. Now, and I know a lot of people who will go out there and just say, hey, I can take whatever woman I want for granted. And she's just going to stick around with me. I may or may not have been guilty about that in my past as well. I will neither confirm or deny that. Now, this friend of mine lives far away, so we've not been able to spend time together. But one of the things that I saw myself doing almost immediately after meeting this person, this young woman, is I started to improve myself. I got back on my keto diet, and I've lost a bunch of weight. I've kept... Even though I live in just a little closet, I've kept that cleaner. I've cleaned up my finances even more than I already did before I moved. And again, also sought better employment, better opportunities in doing so. And it's the self-improvement effect. And it doesn't always have to be for a girl, but I mean, 100,000 years of evolution can't be wrong either. Whereas if you want to mate, you become a more desirable mate. You make yourself better. You do better. You do better things for yourself. You clean up your act. There are some Adonises out there that will never have to do that. They can be as bad as they want to, and they'll still get that opportunity. But I mean, it's something that I've preached even, again, outside of the relationship status. And I am thankful that I did find somebody who did kick me into gear and start making me look at my life on a better microscope and realizing where my failings were, try to correct some of them, and realizing where my successes were and try to embellish some of them. Because that's important to do. But even outside of this, we're coming into a point where we're almost guaranteed a recession right now. The news media will keep trying to tell you that there's not going to be a recession right after we hear about another 400, 500 layoffs out there. And prices for products are starting to come back down. And even if there's not, the best way to shield yourself from any sort of incoming financial burden, recession, or life's little surprises is to improve yourself. Get one more new skill, drop one vice, and clean up your act just a little bit more. I've been playing guitar a little bit more. I've been trying to be more social. One of the things that, especially when I really looked at my life and some of the failings that were going on there, the last place that I lived, I had hit the dead end of my job, but I was also just not social. I was a shut-in. I never left my home except to go to work. Occasionally I went out to a bar, but, didn't know anybody. For 4 years in town, I didn't know anybody. Didn't meet anybody, never talked to anybody. And that's something that I've worked very hard to not do here. And I've, met people around here, gone out occasionally, had a nice drink, talked to people while I'm out. Something I never did in my last place. So self-improvement is a real thing, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for somebody to kick it into gear for me, because that is important. That's something to go back and pay attention to. And if you are looking down the barrel, or even if you're not, like even if you're comfortable in your situation, learn one new skill, drop one vice. Make yourself more employable. Make it harder for your job to get rid of you, because again, we see the layoffs every single day. Even if you are in absolutely no danger, push the issue, make yourself more valuable. Make it so that your employer has to wonder whether or not you're going to go back out and start your own firm doing what it is that you do. Because that's the important part. And I'm thankful for the fact that I've been put onto the path for that. Although I will say, at this point, I need beard maintenance. Bad. I've dropped some of the weight. I've kept my little closet apartment cleaner. But I still forego my beard maintenance until the last minute. I'm going to do that over the Saturday. Clean it all up, make it all look real nice, smooth. The edge is good. Get the little hairs out of my mouth again. But with that, we're out of here. We're going to take off. Where's our outro music? All right, with that, we're done. We're over. It's gone. We've got through actually most of the news today, all the Hunter stuff. We talked about Mitch McConnell. Hope that he is living a long and happy life. And a whole host of other things here. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and I have got a big stack of stuff that I like and stuff that I hate. And I've got almost equals on both sides of that too. So I think, because I had a lot of stuff that I liked this week that I was able to gather up, I think what we're going to add on to that stack for tomorrow for things I like and things that I hate will almost exactly even it out. So we'll actually have a balance, things I like and things that I hate. If you are on Twitch, stick around. We're going to go find somebody to go and raid. Otherwise, we will see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Go find some friends, hang out, hug your family, get some dinner. Finish up the work that you have to do. And bring some more people in here for news, headlines, and contemporary tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.